facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Now, of course, it is 26 days into the month of May, and also that means we're actually just 4 days away into mid this year. Now, that also means that we have just 6 months to complete a year, and that again will mean that you're closer to the things that you plan to do this year. And for some of those that you have been able to achieve, we say glory to God, and for those you're yet to achieve, we still expect and carry hope into the same. Now, most importantly, also today is a day where a lot of celebrations have been happening. We saw just a couple of days, we saw the parliament choose its speakership. The office has been truly composed. What remains is the composition of government in terms of the executive. That and much is what we'll be bringing you in our show today, Good Morning Uganda. But also, my name is Nkunda Felix, and I do not do this alone. I do this with my colleagues, that is Priscilla, Nalwoga, and also Kirabo, Robert, Nyonyintono. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Felix. Good morning, everybody that has decided to start your day with us here on UBC TV. And this is Good Morning Uganda. So much. Yes, Felix, instead on a bit of politics, we also have sports. We look at what is trending in the print media, but also we have our GMU agenda. So there is so much that we have for you this morning, and it's the reason why you should keep it on UBC till the end of times. Yes, Priscilla, a lovely morning to you, sister.
Good morning to you, Robert, and good morning to Uganda. Thank you so much for joining us yet again for Wednesday's edition, the 26th day of May 2021. My name is Priscilla Nalwoga. Definitely excited to be here, and so much things are actually starting to take shape. Now that we have the parliament taking shape, we can't wait for more that is yet to come, because all this is building up to June, which is equally going to be a very, very busy month for us as Uganda. We do have the presidential address that will be coming all through. That is the State of the Nation. We are expecting the budget readings and the conclusions of how much you're going to be contributing to the next budget in the next financial year. So that is something to look out for in the coming days here. Good Morning Uganda, obviously, we will be giving you updates. We'll be giving you the ins and the outs of these conversations as and when they build up. But today, obviously, you have to get to your next destination. On traffic later on this morning, we will be looking at some of those traffic destinations and the fuel prices. Are they conducive enough for you given the current economy? Also, the weather. Climate change is a continuous conversation that we must actually embrace and find a way to find solutions that are going to change our environment, our stay in our localities, given the rain, given the water, given the humidity, given the trees. Yeah, tree planting. I hope one of these days Molen can give us a conversation about the importance of planting trees to climate.
Well, of course, speaking about climate and very many things that also were mentioned by my colleagues, Robert talked about sports, and Priscilla also brought in the aspect of movements, traffic and all that. But something quite interesting again did happen. I noticed that yesterday one of the people call him deserter, who had deserted the office, that is Chris Obori in the parliament. Yesterday he returned back to work in high spirits. And I kept on asking myself, how long can you hold a grudge? And maybe I'll start with you, Priscilla, and I'll tell you why I'm choosing to start with you, Priscilla. And I stand to be corrected. I know that women, how they hold grudges is definitely different from how men actually hold grudges.
That is true.
I know for a fact that men may disagree on a couple of things, but it's easy for them to mend and move on. But women sometimes hold things that how old can you hold a grudge with someone?
Well, a grudge, it depends on what's the nature of the grudge. Yeah, because there are different levels.
I didn't know there were also levels.
There are levels. No, there's the level of, you know what, it's water under the bridge, let's move on. That's an easy grudge. Then there's the grudge that has actually gotten to the core of your heart. And some people, some women will choose to smile at you, but deep inside you, they actually
want to eat
stabbing you, not eating you, stabbing you. And then others will completely just sign off and not interact with you up until there's resolution to that grudge. Yeah. And in this present day and era, the interpretation of that is that they block you, they don't pick up your calls. Yeah.
But if you have a grudge, you know, why would I call you?
No, because
don't expect a call from me if you are.
No, because you as a man, Felix, for you the grudge is water under a bridge. Like it was yesterday.
You try to reach out. You try to.
Yes.
Kirabo, do you hold grudges? Kirabo, be honest.
I want to be honest with you, Felix. I used to, but one time I realized that
How
people
long
even
ago
have.
Is this, Robert?
Wait, no, that you even have. They're not even aware. They're not even aware. Some people do certain things, and to them it's normal. You get so for you, you have that burden, you have that baggage on your head, you're stressed and everything. So if I can't talk things with someone, I just let go. Because there are people, you think you're holding a grudge, he's not concerned, he's not affected.
The truth is,
it's just you're hurting yourself. You're doing more harm than good.
The downside of a grudge is that it is you who actually suffers, not the person who has actually caused the grudge to you.
I've actually over time also learned that sometimes letting go or forgiving, we do it for our own selves. Not even for people we forgive, people we let go. You need to do it for your own self. So, and I looked at Kirabo taking office and I was like, wow, this is, it has been bad like this all this long. You can imagine. But nevertheless, Parliament is up and running. We expect a lot from it. Yesterday, the Honorable, Right Honorable Jacob Olanya was touring Parliament, which was also a bit funny.
But Felix, you're contradicting yourself. Today you're saying you're expecting a lot. Yesterday you said you have no expectations from this Parliament.
basing on the statements of the Speaker, which he made yesterday, as I was still saying, he toured Parliament. He was on a tour, which he has been deputizing for 10 years. And
what is there to tour? What else?
And I was a bit disappointed.
These are different capacities.
It doesn't matter.
These are different capacities.
Where's the capacity? You've been going to the very same office you're now going to be sitting in.
Now you're going as the head of the institution.
Anyway,
does it change the colors of the wall?
Maybe there are
Does it change
things that
the
have not
number
been
of floors
going
in
on
Parliament?
right. Get me right. There could be things that have not been going on right in that specific institution, but under your capacity, there is nothing you could do much. So now, having all so you're coming in a different capacity.
Limited to the physicality of office that you must tour the very same spaces you've been in for the last 10 years.
How do you know if even he has been touring the entire Parliament?
Wow.
But anyway, for me, as a bit,
it's worth it. And of course, it is more
of
a sign of showing
a drill
possession
that people go through. It's a drill. It's nothing more.
But with meaning.
I think it's simply protocol.
Yeah, exactly, protocol.
But I was a bit disappointed with the Right Honourable Speaker, Jacob Olanya, with his dress code. I have never seen him in Parliament without a bow tie or a tie. He left his collar hanging. He looked a bit shabby. Honestly speaking, that was for me a very, very low
Felix,
peak.
on day one, you're already holding the man by the tie.
Because he has a signature look.
Yes, he has a signature look, but he's dressed. Isn't he dressed? Isn't that what?
That was a bad start on my end.
Now,
and actually,
this one,
what's more, as a litigant,
you the bow tie. Tomorrow, what is it going to be? Allow the man to start his work in peace.
Some were saying we can't breathe, so let's let others breathe, more so when they have more breathing space. And this is a time we want to take a look at our poll question this morning. It is coming up there, and we need to know, give us your views, your opinions. How best can Parliament work towards democracy regardless of the differences in political parties? How best can Parliament work towards democracy regardless of the differences in their political parties?
Now go over to our Twitter account and look for hashtag UBCGMU. You will be able to find the poll question, but better still follow us on Twitter at UBCTV Uganda, and you will still find the conversation and give us your details. On YouTube, we are having our streaming going on live right now on UBC Television Uganda, and equally on Facebook, UBC TV.
Now, of course, do not forget to also get yourself a bottle of Hallelujah ginger tea drink and Hallelujah tamarind drink for those who do want to start their day fresh and naturally, because it does at least have ingredients that are actually natural. For the tamarind, it's very much good for health benefits for those who have high blood pressure and for those who have had at least pre-existing conditions. And for those who love the ginger tea drink, you will not get it wrong, just like Kirabo and Priscilla. But nevertheless, we'll be going into our local stories, the stories that did happen at least the last 24 hours, and later on I will be taking you through international stories.
And we'll begin with what happened in Parliament yesterday when the new Speaker made a tour to a couple of offices there. The newly elected Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Oulanyah, made his first tour and met all directors, deputy directors and staff of Parliament in their respective departments. Oulanyah stressed to maintain the spirit of an open door policy. He appealed to the directors and staff to serve the institution of Parliament as a people's institution. It was at exactly 11 a.m. yesterday when the Speaker entered a few offices, ensuring that he interacts with most of the new people that were there. Oulanyah interfaced with the several directors of Parliament, deputy directors and some staff. However, he called on the officers of Parliament he interfaced with to be positive in their line of duty. He said all the staff he met should release positive energies and should have no reserve to ensure that they move forward Parliament as a people's institution. Oulanyah also urged them not to carry grudges, a thing he said brings out negative energies that will not push the Parliament any further but cause people to disintegrate and confusion within the institution.
Still focusing on the build-up of Parliament into its journey, Bukedia woman MP Miss Anita Among has been elected Deputy Speaker of the 11th Parliament after beating Kampala Central MP Muhammad Nsereko Independent. And among those, Among got 415 votes, while her closest contender, Nsivambi, got 35. Mr. Nsereko trailed with 24 votes. Anita Among of NRM was nominated for the position of Deputy Speaker by Ajiru County MP Dennis Amson Oboa and seconded by Rushenyi County MP Naomi Kabasharira during the first sitting of the 11th Parliament at Kololo Airstrip. In her maiden speech, Among thanked MPs, NRM party and people of Bukedia district for their unwavering support.
Away from issues of Parliament, we now head to issues of security, where the Chief of Staff, Land Forces, Major General Leopard Chanda, called upon East African member states to collaborate in order to combat the spread of motivated criminal actions of the international nature. Chanda was speaking at the 3rd anniversary ceremony of the East African Fusion and Liaison Unit in Entebbe. The East African member states have commemorated this day and called for unity among all states. The unit was created to enhance intelligence sharing and security cooperation against terrorism and transnational organized crimes.
Still yesterday, we had the General Court Martial sitting in Machindye and finally releasing 17 National Unity Platform supporters on a non-cash bail of 20 million. The chairman for that is Lieutenant General Andrew Guti released the persons with conditions not to go beyond Kampala and Wakiso districts without court permission. At 11:30 a.m. yesterday, 35 National Unity Platform supporters were at the General Court Martial in Machindye for the hearing of their bail application. Before court, prosecution led by Major Samuel Masereje informed court that they have no objection to the bail application of 14 accused persons. However, prosecution asked court for more time until the 8th of June 2021 to reply to Eddie Sebufu Elias, Eddie Mutwe, Elias, also Bukeni Ali, Elias Nubian Lee, and 16 others bail applications through this. And although it was put in, objection by the defense was given. The prayer was granted by Chairman Lieutenant General Andrew Guti by giving stringent bail conditions on to the accused.
Priscilla, the law has got its procedures. And of course, this is one of the things that we are seeing at the General Court Martial as others are asking, putting in their bail application. Sometime, bunches, but we keep on praying that at the end of the day, justice will prevail no matter what the outcomes could be. I see Felix ready to take us, fly us to international stories.
Clearly, that is not a plane, Robert. I don't know what that is. That could be a
Uganda setting off.
That could be a border. But anyway, we'll go into our international stories. Now we'll be looking at India. Now, UN comes out to say that COVID in India, unlike anything experienced in the region. The situation of the pandemic ravaged South Asia, unlike anything in our region has been seen before. Now, the regional director of UNICEF said on Tuesday, now the sheer scale and speed of this new surge of COVID-19 is outstripping countries' abilities to provide self-saving treatment. Now, George Leah Adjeni told the reporters on Monday that is in Geneva. She also mentioned that while India recorded their highest ever single-day death toll from COVID-19, that is of 4,529 deaths in one day last week, an estimated 228,000 children and at least 11,000 mothers across the region died due to disruptions of essential health care services in the same country. Still looking at international stories now, we do cross over to the United States of America, while we're looking at George Floyd's sister says Biden broke promise on the bill. Now, George Floyd's sister has boycotted a meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden, saying he broke a promise to enact police reform legislation by the anniversary of her brother's death. While Bridget Floyd attended a rally in Minneapolis, Minnesota, other family members lobbied Mr. Biden at the White House to help pass the bill. Now, George Floyd's Justice in Policing Act stalled at Capitol Hill. On Tuesday, cities in the U.S. and abroad marked a year since Floyd's death. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was convicted last month of the murder of George Floyd, who was 46 years, a black man, after kneeling on his neck area for at least more than 9 minutes. Now back to Mali, we're looking at Mali president and prime minister have been ousted by the officer who led last year's coup and became vice president of an interim government. Colonel Assimi Goïta says President Ba Ndwa and the PM Mokhtar Oune failed in their duties and were seeking to sabotage the country's transition. They were arrested hours after a government reshuffle, which saw 2 senior army officers replaced, and Colonel Goïta says elections will still go ahead next year as planned. But he also ignored pleas from UN chief, the African Union, and the Economic Community of the West African States, that is ECOWAS, and the EU and the US, that the president and prime minister be released without any precautions. The 2 men have been held at a military camp outside the capital, that is Bamako, since they were arrested on Monday evening. Well, that is what is happening in most of the countries, that is both in Asia. We saw what's happening in India. We crossed over to US, broken promises, and back to Africa in Mali, while we see coups taking charge. This is what we have always said, and that's why probably we have reason to make celebrations, at least for now, in this beautiful motherland. But something also quite interesting, Robert, we'll be talking about AU, the African Union, later, but majorly its role in demystifying some of these insurgencies and breakouts. Maybe just a quick one. Has it lived to serve its purpose in terms of integration? Do you feel that Africa is integrated? Just that, do you feel that Africa has a certain level of integration?
To some extent, it has, because we have regional bodies. You'll have the SADC, you'll have the, here you have the East African region. You see that there's some bit of unity, but the challenge it's facing now is lack of, first and foremost, a standard army. That is an army that can go and ensure in case there's a coup and have to fight democracy and install and ensure that we don't have these coups. because of that, you're having a modern way of doing things. Previously, yes, people would fight and lives would be lost, but you saw what happened in Zimbabwe, Uncle Bob. It was the place is in a safe place, feel free, but at the end of the day, we saw a government. Come to Sudan, how Bashir it happened. So it lacks a standard army and also finances, because even where I've seen the African Union have forces to ensure there is peace, when you look at the funder, you'll find it's the Western world doing this funding. So you need to have both the arms, you need to have a financial muscle to address some of these issues.
Priscilla, do you think Africa is integrated?
Well, Africa is integrated. Of course, we can never have the 100% achievement of it, at least not anytime soon.
So on a spectrum of 10, we are where? On
a spectrum of 10, I would say we're at 40. Yes, I would say we're at 40. But I would like to make a comment on George Floyd and the one-year anniversary. When George Floyd was killed, murdered by the police in the USA, this actually was one of the many cases that followed black killings in the States in current day times that changed the shape of politics, that even changed the face and the way sports actually was done. The season that has just been recently concluded across Europe, these murders actually shaped what they were actually advocating for the past seasons. They were against racism and these kinds of murders. They were taking knees, bowing one knee every time a match was being kicked off. They took a knee and then a match was kicked off thereafter. But 1 year later, one should assess what has been the impact of all these advocacies across the globe into what the sister was also highlighting, that 1 year later, you've not kept your promise of changing and having an alternative to the reforms that are current.
Well, we are waiting to see more change, more reforms. The world is moving steady first and very much in the right direction, I guess. Now we'll be having a break. Well, we'll have one of those nice songs that is Sam Chimeda, one of our friends that we did host a couple of months or weeks ago, and he'll be doing a song called Slow Down. Let's take a break. When we come back, me, Robert, Priscilla, we will be taking you through the newsreel and we'll be looking at the African Union. Yesterday were one of the celebrations that were held also here in Kampala.
shops around.
Experience 100% 4G speeds across Uganda with the Airtel 4G Pocket Wi-Fi available at 123,000 shillings only. It comes with 15 GB free for 1 month. Visit the nearest Airtel shop, device selling shop or Airtel online shop. www.airtel.co.ug/broadband-discover. Airtel, the smartphone network.
What does it mean to be closer together? It's taking the last bus home for a surprise visit. Closer together is strangers finding a connection. It's bringing home something much more than a box. It's the warmth of home or the beginning of something new. There's magic in sharing the things that we love, because it's those things that bring us close together.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
It is always a pleasure knowing that you're watching UBC TV. Thank you for doing that. And of course, every weekday, make it a date with us from 6:30 till the hour of 9 as we discuss issues of national importance. And I'm not alone. I'm with my sister, that is Priscilla Nalwoga, and my brother, Felix Nkunda. Africa has been in existence since time. Of course, when our colonial masters came in, they divided, they partitioned, they scrambled for this great continent, dividing us by borders. However, this raised a couple of challenges, in addition to what we already had as indigenous people. There have been several attempts by a number of Africans or Pan-Africanists trying to ensure that Africa as a whole stands and better addresses its challenges. We remember it was on the 25th of May, the year 1963, when 30 out of the 32 independent states by then in Africa sat and formed the Organization of African Unity. This later in 2000, the name was changed to African Union. There have been struggles, there have been a couple of challenges, but also as well as achievements. This is what we want to look into. The African Union, a day that was celebrated, remembering when it was formed. That was the 25th of May. Here in Kampala, there were a couple of celebrations where some Pan-Africans demanded or called upon government to make this a public holiday. That is also something we shall have a bit in our discussion, but let's first go back to understand the Organization of African Union, now the African Union. Has it served the purpose? Why was it formed? And we gauge, are you moving in the right direction or not? I'll begin with Felix. Felix, this is something that we should be proud of, and many want to refer to ourselves as Pan-Africans. We have the spirit of Africa, the journey and the challenges.
Yeah, well, Robert well said about the African Union. As you did mention that its establishment was fetched back in the year of 1963 then, where we saw at least, I think by then we had about 32 countries that were colonized, that were already independent, if I must say, in Africa. But 30 of them would only agree to the fact that they had, or it was urgent for them to form a union that would bring them together in terms of lobbying. Majorly then, the most important was political independency and of course formation of economic attributes. And no wonder, very closely after, you notice that a couple of institutions like the Organization of African Economic States was also formed in relation of bringing to life some of these. But Robert, if you want to appreciate the African Union, there's no way you will not talk about the pre-African Union era, where we saw a couple of leaders, what you termed the Pan-Africans. And just to mention but a few, the likes of the Kenneth Kaundas, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Mwalimu Nyereres, the Kenyattas of this world. You look at even in Uganda, we had some who had tremendous contribution, the likes of Semei, the Kakungurus. You have the likes of the living now, the late Chirunda Chivejinda. You also had the great contribution of Muzei Bidandisali, and just to mention but a few. And their dream was that we must consolidate efforts as a bloc. Remember these people, because I think, if I remember well, Mzee, the late Chivejinja had studied somewhere in Asia. He had just come back from Asia. Ndugu Bidandi had also come back from Europe. Now, they had seen the power of blocs, how Asia had done it, how Europe had done it, or how it had survived throughout the various wars because of its being a bloc. Now, they've had in mind that when we come back home, how about we have something of this kind? Remember, countries then were still stumbling, and greatly, by the way, with neo-colonialism. Countries had just gotten independent. Even Uganda, I think, was just 1 year after independence in '63. And they were still struggling with how do you pick up the pieces. Governments were being made and falling, made and fall. Now, the African Union was a solace, like an umbrella protection to African countries in terms of economy and also independence. The African Union was meant to bring together. That's why previously it was called the Organization of African Union. That is the OAU. And because it was an organization where African countries would come together to lobby in terms of political independence, economic independence, but also to have what we call release of, by then we had most of African people like prisoners. When you look at what was going on in Rwanda around that time, you know what the Belgians were doing and the French and what. You go to Congo, go to Malawi, go to Namibia, go to Cote d'Ivoire, but also later on the tremendous and heinous acts of the white man in South Africa. This was most vocal then.
The apartheid times.
It was most vocal around that time. Now, as it came on growing, it started to take shape. The Organization of African Union started to take shape because it had presence. Now, the people who were manning it had a bigger dream of what you call the Pan-African dream. They had a dream that one day this bloc would have the capacity to solve its problems. That was basically the ideology, that the African Union, Organization of African Union, that if we organize the African countries economically, culturally, religiously, politically, we can solve those problems, because those are the basic problems of a state. They have social, economic problems and political problems. Then we can be able to solve. Now, no wonder they even agreed that when we form this union, let its leadership be rotational. For us to have divergent ideologies, let every state have an opportunity to come and hold. Now, in 2002, after it had at least achieved a milestone in terms of independence, because the last country then to gain independence, I think in 1994, was South Africa, if I'm not mistaken, in the aftermath of apartheid, that it found it fit that it should transit from just a simple organization into a conglomerate continental body that meant its change or shift of faces to the African Union in 2002.
This is where I want to bring in Priscilla, having heard more regarding why it was formed, the coalition of independence, fighting for freedom, then later united on these various fronts. Let's look at the achievements or the challenges of African Union, because since it was formed, like Felix said, yes, there have been a couple of achievements. We've seen more by that formation. You had 32 states that had independence, but now the greater, even South Sudan recently got its independence. What are some of those challenges of this regional body?
Well, picking from the history that Felix has shared with us, you want to look at, first of all, what was the original vision of the organization of the African Union, now the African Union, as we celebrated African Day yesterday. You look at one of the things that they were trying to push for was for integration, prosperity. They were looking at a peaceful Africa that is actually driven by its own citizens, the African citizens, and one that would actually represent Africa as a dynamic continent to the rest of the world. And that was the global arena then. So what then would have been an achievement is that Africa would prosper, and Africa would create its own peaceful environment and stability economically, and Africa would have its own integration with its different parts of the region, northwest, south, and central. However, then it was achieved. You saw one of the achievements, of course, the independence of various states over time, and how African Union was actually key and instrumental in some of these. Most relevant case would be South Africa, when we had the war of apartheid in South Africa, and you had Nelson Mandela going to prison, trying to fight for independence for South Africa. And that was something that actually stretched not just in South Africa, but to the southern region of Africa. They all got to suffer from the apartheid time of this political era. Now, the African Union at that time came in and did a job in changing the face of South Africa up until them gaining independence. And it was very instrumental in South Africa gaining independence. However, for me, the challenge, that achievement worked then, but times have changed. While then their vision was to push that the African continent is well represented as dynamic to the global arena, today we have globalization. And now we are expected to be in unison of one another as continents. Now, how do you have globalization and still want to stay in your own territory and build your own territory? That then was an achievement. Now it is starting to bite us, because we must embrace globalization. We must embrace the fact that economies are now integrated across the continents, not even just across countries and borders today. Now that, for me, is a challenge. That how does the African Union embrace globalization but still push for what their agenda originally was? Now the question would be, do we have integrated regions? I think they have done a good job in pushing for integration in the different parts of Africa. COMESA, the trade-free zones and things like that. I think they have done a good job. When it comes to peace, obviously when Felix is here telling us what is happening on the African continent, most recent current is the Mali story and the coups. Because of independence, we have seen some of these African states gaining what we call peace and stability. However, I feel like in most reflection of especially the countries that have had elections in the last 12 months, you get to see that there's been a heavy interaction of the politics and the army. And in one way or another, we're seeing the coup that actually, not the coup, but when we had the President Idris, the late, being killed on the front line, battle line, we are having just here in South Sudan, we're having issues still military related. Mali, now the coup that we're experiencing in Mali, I feel like this is going to become a wave on the African continent, seeing military risings coming back again. Now that is definitely going to interrupt the peace and stability that has been created across, because guess what, if Ugandan forces are going to help Mali to overcome that, the interpretation may be different. Showing support, but the interpretation of showing that support is different, because just a case here for South Sudan, we couldn't have our own military unless upon invitation can they go and protect the Ugandans.
So you feel that yes, the African Union, previously the Organization of African Unity, we see that the biggest challenge has been issues of that is politics or issues of leadership. Yes, economically we still have our challenges, and we must accept a big percentage of countries are still in the third world. But Felix, how do we then address this issue, the endless wars in Africa, even where we have this union, but we've not seen it being more onto ground to solve some of these issues. And this now seems continuous, that Africa, we first had coups, then we adopted democracy. Democracy seemed a bit to be working. Now we've had democracy that is no longer a solution, because even when we have leaders in many of these countries and they're elected, still the aftermath, we've seen riots. Now there's this modern war of coups where the president is just captured, then is in a safer place. That is now also coming up.
Robert, I would want also to answer your question in relation to the theory of attraction. That you can only cause true attraction and reaction to places where you have negative, either negative power or positive power. What is the contribution of the African Union to the economic growth of African countries? Let's imagine if the African Union pulled out or it blocked relationships with any of the African member state countries. What would be the effect? It all starts there. That does the African Union have does it have the capacity to apprehend institutions? The biggest challenge up till today to the African Union, if you read even from the rhetorics of the academia, you will be glad to note that the biggest challenge up till today is sovereignty. In as much as integration, in as much as relationship and also submissiveness happens at Addis or in the African Union, countries do not lose their sovereignty. Now, with the existence of sovereignty, it later on brings into play the notion of limited interference. International law in terms of state relations or international relations in terms of law, you would notice that countries never lose their sovereignty. That's why you cannot say, the European Union cannot pass a resolution to change a president of a country, because the country has a process and a system on how it changes. Now, until we deal with that, when you look at the African Union, the European Union, it has mandate onto some things that affect. That's why they almost stalled the Brexit. They had the power to stall, even up till today. The Brexit is not complete because they have the power as the union. They will determine that they can even determine the currency you use. They say you're using a pound, you're supposed to use euros in this. They can question that. Then you can prove to the contrary. They can even say that you cannot leave the European Union with this capacity, because there's some bit of bindingness. They have some sort of power that binds them away from just the rhetorics of statement that we belong. And if you bring that probably in the setup of society, it is not enough for you to say, "Oyo mchara wange." You don't know where she stays. You cannot tell her that don't go out. You cannot be in charge or in control of her activities. So that's the biggest challenge. In as much as AU notices, by the way, it does notice, the president acknowledged that he's swearing in that the AU passed a resolution against NATO attacking Libya. It was on record, and that is common knowledge to all of you people who have interested yourself. Even then, he also came to mention, and if I may quote him verbatim, he said that he interested himself to even lobby his colleagues, and he was able to mention Zuma, by then was president of South Africa, that we could create a Stalingrad in Tripoli to bring down the aircraft so we can have a grounded fight to protect a colleague. But do you know why that couldn't go on? That would be foreign interference. Maybe he was just shy to say. You cannot, as she said, you can't deploy Ugandan army in Libya without the invitation of Libya, unless it is on humanitarian grounds that contravene the Geneva Convention of 1959. Now, that is another different whole dimension of international and what.
The question then, I beg, would be, how do we break down this whole challenge of sovereignty that you have painted?
We need to empower the union. It is not just enough to be a member. And I can give you another example, a layman's example. if we have an association today, it is not just enough to say Kirabo is a member, but if Kirabo misses 3 meetings, we cannot penalize, we cannot punish, we cannot. We must have, you see, implementation of policy must go with punitive. Criminology and penology. You cannot put an offense in place that if you beat Priscilla, it's wrong. But if there's nothing you can do to me, it's
then
just wrong.
It loses meaning.
You get the point. You must have criminology, identify how the framework of the institution works and how you can apprehend those who abuse it. For example, let's imagine what is the status of a coup in the African Union setup. How do you recognize that? There are people who have come as coup d'etats and they are heading states. How do you protect? So those are, I think, the questions that are henceforth as we celebrate this day, away from just them asking for a public holiday. I think they still have a lot of challenges.
Well, they feel this will create more awareness among people in Uganda. There are countries that have this as a public holiday, and Ghana is one of those countries that I know, Namibia. So that
South
actually
Africa.
they ensure it creates more in the minds of people that why is it a public holiday? Okay, it's and of course activities there at events will do something good. However, that is what the African Union has gone through, and we still pray and hope that we shall have a very strong African Union one day that has both powers to fight and to cause change. We must look at some of these agreements for the good of the body. And also, I remember when the president of this body was Paul Kagame, and he was looking at subscription. Can you imagine, Felix? Even countries fail to honor their subscription.
Because there's nothing you can do to them if they don't pay. That's what I'm trying to say, that when you put policy in place, when you put a law in place, it is not good enough to legislate without how to implement or enforce. That's why on top of the legislature or the August House, you must have the executive
Let me
that
ask
has
also,
the army, police and prisons.
These are the, do you in one way feel that maybe for some of these changes, member states or authorities among member states lack the moral authority?
I beg your pardon?
Lack the moral authority over a brother who may have done wrong?
You see, moral authority is relative. I think